We got a bidet!
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are talking about the new Disney's Haunted Mansion movie that just came out. There was another one in the past, the one with Eddie Murphy, but for some reason Disney felt they had to make a new one. Not quite sure what the decision was for that, but needless to say, we got it. We both saw it, and so we're here to talk to you about what the movie was about, how we thought about it, and give it a rating at the end for what we would think it'd get out of 10. So we're going to
That other
start
one
with,
came out 20 years ago.
oh, 20 years ago was the other one. Man, do I feel old now. So we're going to talk to you about some things with non-spoilers first, and then the second half, we will start talking a little more in detail. Sarah rewatched the trailer, so she'll kind of dictate, for the most part, what we will be talking about here. But there's a couple things I think I can speak to where it won't be so much spoilers, because I feel like the trailer didn't really give much idea of what was happening in this movie.
The trailer essentially tells you that the house is haunted. It's driving the new family that moved in crazy, especially the little kid, and that they're looking for help from these random people. So you see like the various people and little bits and pieces.
Okay, so that's all we can really go off of. So I guess I'll just start talking about my thoughts on the movie, again, without spoilers. I thought that the movie was interesting. I think one of the nice things about this movie is that, you know, no matter what, there's one that came out before us. You're automatically going to be comparing it to the other one if you've seen it. And I feel like this movie did a good enough job where they totally understand that another one came out, and so I feel like they try to not focus on a lot of the big things that happened in that movie and try to focus on things that weren't covered in that movie. Like for instance, behind Sarah is the Hatbox Ghost. He was not a big component in the first movie, but he is a big component in this movie. So they did a nice job of uh, having their own identity in comparison to the other one. To go along with that, that doesn't mean that they ignored everything from the first one, but it wasn't a main plot of the movie. So, like for instance, they're like in the ride for the movie and talking about the one in the past. The one in the past talked about the character that like hung themselves, and we see that in the ride, when you're in the stretching room and then you look up and it shows the dude dangling by the rope. In the first movie they focus on that. In the second movie we just kind of get like a little portrait of who that person was, kind of a thing. So it's kind of a if you know type situation with that. But I did like that they paid attention to those details. What did you think about the movie without spoilers?
I feel like they did a good job having their own identity from the first movie. It's got a different it's a different plot point, right? Because it's not realtors trying to buy the house and sell it. It's a family moving in and trying to make a home for themselves, which is a very classic haunted house style plot device, I guess you could say.
Right.
Excuse me. Um, some things that were different that I really enjoyed would be the music. I feel like that matched the ride a lot more. I Jeremy's normally the musical person who can pick out, like, oh, this is from that movie or whatever. But it was in your face enough that I was able to pick up on it. So I thought that was neat. Like I could hear music from the ride that I recognized being from the ride. And there were some other things that you could see throughout the movie that were also from the ride. One of them being like the ballroom scene, for example. Um, so being able to see these different things and recognizing them from the ride, I feel like this movie paid a lot more homage to the ride than the first Haunted Mansion did. Not to say that the first Haunted Mansion is bad. I really liked that movie. I grew up with it, but I feel like this one has a deeper connection to the ride itself. So that I thought was pretty cool.
Which is
Um,
interesting because I'm the exact opposite. I feel like the other, like if I were to say, like put them on a spectrum, whether or which one did more, I feel like the first one was like 70 to 80% ride driven as far as like these are things that are plot points that they are using from the ride. Whereas this one, I feel like it was probably a good 40 to 50% of the ride that they used to drive their story. Because I mean the plot of the movie is not in the ride per se.
yeah.
So I feel like a lot of the stuff that they took from the ride were more cosmetic, minus the villain kind of a thing. But go ahead, keep going.
The other thing I was gonna mention was our little cast or crew, like the main group that we've seen in the trailer and that you've seen from the they released some movie posters recently that looked like tarot cards of each of the different like main characters and whatnot. So in reference to those characters, I feel like they did a pretty nice job. But it wasn't enough to make me feel like this is like an excellent movie. I just feel like it's a pretty all right movie. Like it was pretty good. I wasn't bored, but it was also pretty predictable. So that's why I'm kind of like in the it's somewhere in the middle for me.
I think what kind of hurts this movie is that I like that they tried to have their own identity with it, but my problem is I feel like the original has a lot of good stuff in it from the ride, and this one has a lot of what was left over from the ride. And I feel like if they didn't do two separate ones and they put these two things together, like if instead of in the original that the butler was the dude that was, the one that messed everything up, like maybe it was this Hatbox Ghost that was behind everything. Like this isn't spoilers. I was just kind of trying to imagine what could have happened in the original as like maybe because I guess let me back up a minute here. One of the things that they did really well with this movie, at least that they tried to accomplish, is that if you know the behind the scenes of how the Haunted Mansion ride was being put together, as far as who was in charge, there was two dudes that were working together to make this ride, and one of them specialized in horror and the other one specialized in comedy, and they really went back and forth on whether this ride should be more horror or more comedy. And what we got out of the ride itself is that the beginning part is kind of the creepy mansion, and then once you get to, is it Loretta is her name?
Madame Leota.
Leota, sorry. Once you get to Madame Leota in the ride, that's when the script flips and it's more of the comedic party fun time in the ride as opposed to trying to scare you so much. And I feel like with this movie they tried to establish that tone. They tried to establish some scary elements and some funny elements just like the ride did. It's kind of those weird things where if you didn't know that about the ride, you may not understand why there's so much of a blend in the movie. And I think that's where it's coming from. So I think, with them having Eddie Murphy in the past, they really could have went good, like solid with the comedy part. But I think they could have even done a really neat thing where, because in the first one, the Prince dude like doesn't understand why the his girlfriend or whatever is upset with him or something, and then uh she dies and he just wants to be able to like be with her and stuff. And so I feel like it would have been a better twist if maybe he was just somehow manipulated by the Hatbox Ghost in the original. That way they could have tied it all together. But like I said, they kind of have to have their own unique plots. So I feel like we don't get an ultimate quote unquote haunted mansion movie. We just get two perspectives, and then it's just whichever one you want to get.
Yeah, you made me think of something that I said last night when we were watching the movie that I kind of forgot about, which was one thing that the first movie did better than this one in, I think, is the horror element. So this one, and I know this is kind of backwards of what you just said, but I feel like this one focused more on like the comedy part of it. It wasn't super creepy. Like from the first one, for example, there's a scene where one of the kids has to go in a mausoleum and there's spiders just covering the door, and so having to touch the door with all the spiders, or like swimming in the mausoleum because it's flooded and there's all these skeletons everywhere and stuff like that. Like there wasn't really anything in this new movie that was really like creepy or scary in that sense.
I would say they tried because there are some jump scares that are in the movie. And like that the Hatbox Ghost, he's a creepy dude. Whenever he's on screen, you kind of wonder what's gonna happen with this guy. Um, and there's a
They
couple
did try
other
to build
things.
suspense with him.
What's that?
They did try to build suspense with him.
Right. So I feel like there's some elements here. I think they're more because like the one that you described was like more practical effects. We could probably see some uniqueness in that type of scare, whereas this was maybe more uh by the book or format, or I don't know how to say the word, more formula driven. I was trying to say like formulaic or something like that,
Or formulated.
where they're like, okay, if we want to do like the bare minimum horror that PG-13 movies do, which is what I'm pretty sure this is PG-13, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the bare minimum horror we can do with PG-13? It's like, oh, jump scares. Because that's why people hate going to see PG-13 rated horror movies more often than R-rated horror movies, is because they can't rely on like blood, guts, and gore. They have to rely on jump scares. And I think that's what maybe takes away from this one. Whereas, going through spiders or being chased by skeletons, those are unique things that, we're kind of like, I've never thought of that before. That is actually pretty scary. Whereas, if you say, oh, there's a haunted mansion over there, you're anticipating either something to jump out at you or you're going to psych yourself out and it's going to be some form of jump scare. So it's not its own identity, so to speak, for
I
horror.
just wish this one had a bit more creepiness to it.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree. So I think that pretty much covers my feelings as far as things that are non-spoilers. Um, Again, I don't think they tried to do like a cash grab, so to speak, on this one. I do still wonder, why did we have to have another one? Just because I feel like they should have just put their best efforts into the first one. Because, either one, they're trying to do a cash grab, which I don't really think that's what this is. But two, they have to believe that there was some sort of mark that they missed with the original to put out a new one and try to have a new identity with it. You're not going to just put something out just to see if you can find a smaller audience that didn't like the original that may like this one. That's not what they're going to do. They're going to try to appeal to everybody because they want the most money. And so I don't think there was enough fault with the first one to make this one necessary.
Would
So
agree with that.
as far as ratings, you can go first.
All right. So, with all things considered, I think I'm going to give this movie a 6 out of 10. I feel like it's pretty average, but one of the things that kicks it up just a little bit for me was how much I felt like I was on the ride while watching this film between the music and the different visuals that you see. And there's several different hints at the visuals all throughout the movie that I thought were really neat to see. Um, it's something that I thought was unique to this film, which I know Jeremy feels differently about, the first movie resembling the ride more, and that's fine. But this movie gave me more of the ride vibes, at least for me personally, especially with the music. I loved the music. But that's why I'm putting it at a 6. It's a pretty average movie. It wasn't like amazing or super spectacular, but it was a fun watch. And yeah, what do you think?
I think I'd probably give it a 5. I changed it from last night. I was thinking a 6 out the theater, but I think I'm gonna go with a 5, and I think I'm gonna go that way because I think it's an average film. I didn't think it was spectacular, but I didn't think it was awful either. I thought it was kind of middle of the road as far as my expectations. Um, they did pay attention to a lot of things, but I do think with some of the things with the plot and some of the, I don't mean to go here, but some of the acting performances were really iffy for me, and we'll talk about that more with the spoiler section.
Kind of cringy at times with multiple
Cringy,
actors, not just one.
but I kind of felt like there was some, I don't know if it was exactly what the writers were going for, but there was an acting performance where there were certain parts of the movie where I was like, okay, they put their acting shoes on, but then there's others where they just feel like they don't care that they're being there. And I kind of felt that way at times too, because it's just like teaching. Because if you don't know, I'm a teacher. If students see that you don't care, why should they? And it's the same thing. If I feel like the actor doesn't look like they care, why should I? So I'll talk about that more in the spoilers and try to give my rationale behind it, because I'm not trying to be like that person didn't care and that's how it is. There's a couple of things that could be going into it, but no matter what, at the end of the day, the director said that's what I'm looking for, and they put it out. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10. If I were to compare it to the other one, I think I'd give the other one a good 8 out of 10. I think the other one is a bit higher than this one on the scales, and I think they did a better job with bringing the ride to life. Again, we're different on that, but
I
uh,
feel like the other one had a more unique story than just a typical haunted house with needing people to help get the spirits gone.
right. So Sarah's at a 6 out of 10. I'm at a 5 out of 10. I will say we went with some friends and they seem to enjoy it a bit more than we did. So
I think we're a little overly critical compared to our friends that might not be seeing movies all the time.
could be. I'm just saying that it's not like, everybody's gonna not like it slash only like it a little bit like we did. Um, some people really enjoyed it. So, that could be you. So I would say check it out at the bare minimum on streaming. But if you want to see it in theaters, that'd be great too. All
You know,
right.
that's
So
another point I'm gonna say before we jump into spoilers is it's kind of weird to me that we have a spooky type movie that to me would make the most sense to release in October. And it's late July, early August, when this thing's coming out. So like the timing of it's really strange. I could totally see myself being more into this movie if it was like Halloween time, but being in the middle of summer, it's kind of weird. So um I feel like this might be more of like a watch around Halloween type movie.
I don't know if I would feel differently, but I was pretty excited, like pretty stoked to go see this movie because I really wanted to give it a solid chance, knowing that the effort they put into the first one. I was hoping that this one was going to be better than the first one, knowing that they saw what they did and they could have expanded on it and learned from whatever didn't work well with the first one. But I feel like it was kind of like I said, they realized a good chunk of the ride had already been focused on. Well, then we have to focus on this other stuff, and then try to throw in a plot that will make sense with it. And honestly, I feel like the plot, let's just roll into spoilers so we can start talking about things. Again, we're going into spoilers. It's up to you whether you want to keep on watching, pause, X, click away, all that good stuff. But we're going to get into spoilers
Spoilers now.
right now. So, the plot of the movie, which I know Sarah said, you can kind of get from the trailer. The overarching plot of the movie is that this mom and son move into the mansion. She's trying to get a fresh start, and basically they find out that there's ghosts there and they want some help. They tried fleeing, but the ghosts are following them, and they just felt like we put all this money into this house. They're following us, leaving. Might as well go back and then just try to see if we can get some help at the house. So
Well,
that's
it's because all the ghosts keep telling them to go back.
right. That's Rosario Dawson's character. She's the one that's owning the house. And then we also trickle into another character called Ben. Ben meets his lifelong sweetheart in Louisiana, and they get married. And his wife shows him like her interest in like ghosts and stuff, and he eventually, gets excited about it too. But then it turns out that his wife is killed in an accident, and so he's dedicating his life to create a camera that can show slash project the images of the ghosts that are in the room. That way we can see them in the real world. And so, knowing that, there's another person that knows. I should just call her by her character name instead of just Rosario Dawson. Gabby is her name. So, Gabby is reaching out to somebody, and this somebody to get help is Father Kent, who is played by Owen Wilson. And Father Kent goes to see Ben to see if he's up for being a hero. And Ben really isn't into it at first. But eventually he kind of gives in a little bit and he goes to the mansion without Father Kent. He just goes on his own will. And he goes there, and Gabby pays him a ton of money, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to do his job. And when he gets,
$2,000.
what's that?
$2,000.
$2,000. So he gets to the house, and she's telling him what's been going on, and he kind of very skeptical of what's going on because he doesn't really know if he believes a whole lot in that there's ghosts at this mansion, because people are afraid of the smallest noises that they hear. Us as an audience know that something's definitely up, because when Gabby and her son Travis go to the house at first, there's like this knight in armor that keep following them in the house, and they're seeing other ghosts as well. And when they flee, the hitchhiking ghost is what kind of makes them run away. So we as an audience know that something's real, but Ben doesn't think as much. And so when he's taking his camera around, he's making the noise. He's like, Choo! And acting like he's taking pictures when he's really not. And so at the end of all the experience, even though he kind of does see some weird stuff, he just tells them that it's nothing, it's all in their imagination, it's just a house creaking, blah blah blah. And when he goes home, he sees in his camera, or no, he doesn't see it in his camera, he sees something going on in his house, and he uses the camera to look at it, and it projects one of the people that he saw in the paintings at the Haunted Mansion, and it was the skipper, or a captain, if you want to call him that, of a boat. It's a fisherman. And he kind of goes through this whole psychological thing where, the captain is telling him to go back to the mansion, and he goes back to the mansion and says, something followed me. And basically, this is what's starting to bring in all these people that are supposed to help Gabby. So, like, Father Kent shows up. They get him involved. They eventually want to get some help because there's this guy that, a professor that has written books about hauntings in the area of Louisiana. That's where it takes place. And so they go to see him, which is Danny DeVito's character. He plays Professor Bruce. He comes in, he gets involved. Let's see. I think there was at least one more, but maybe I'm mistaken.
You're thinking of the she can talk to the dead people.
Oh,
I'm
Harriet.
blanking. I'm
Yeah,
blanking on what that job description is, but
a
she's a
medium.
medium. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Harriet is the medium that comes in to help with the seance. They find out there's a seance room and they try to, summon the spirits to find out what's going on. And what's really happening is that there are ghosts in the house and they are terrified of the big meanie in the house, so to speak, which is the Hatbox Ghost. The Hatbox Ghost is like trapping all these spirits in the house. It turns out the origins of the Hatbox Ghost is that his father thought he was a bit of a wimp, and so like sent him off to toughen up as a man. And then once he became an adult, anybody that upset him, he wanted to basically get revenge on. So he would throw parties and invite these people to his mansion and then kill them so that they had to be stuck there in his mansion, their spirits. And so all these spirits are basically imprisoned in the house and they need help with dealing with the Hatbox Ghost. Some of the funny things I think we see in the trailer at one point is one of them sees the ghost. Was it Ben? Ben sees the Hatbox Ghost and they're like, what did he look like? And he didn't take a picture or anything, so he can't like show them. And so they go to the police station and the police aren't going to believe them because it sounds crazy that there's this ghost in a house and they're describing him. And it's kind of hilarious that he actually does draw the picture of the Hatbox Ghost from the ride. So you get a little bit of comedy there. Again, they're trying to mix in the scary with the comedy. That's kind of the relief we get. Don't really know all the nitty gritty stuff that we really have to get into. Gabby, her son, is going through some stuff as well, like family issues. He keeps talking about like his dad, and then turns out his dad has actually been dead. Like we think that maybe they're divorced for the longest time, and they come to find out that the dad was dead. So the son's kind of going through that and bullying at school. Aside from the ending, is there really anything else that's like super big?
We get to summon and talk to Madame Leota in her crystal ball.
Yep, we get to, and she actually ends up being a big part of the ending too. I'm trying to remember how they actually. So the ending.
Do you want me to go over the ending?
Yeah, you can go over the ending. That's fine.
So they want to expel the Hatbox Ghost, but to do that, they need a piece of his personal property. So they go tour his original house, and they wind up finding his top hat like underneath the house in like a crawl space. The kid finds it. So they get that. Harriet has to summon or like bring back Madame Leota so that way the two of them are strong enough together to expel the Hatbox Ghost. And so there's 999 happy haunts living here, and there's room for one more, right? Because you hear that in the ride. And they say that in the movie too. But the last ghost has to be a willing person. So he keeps trying to bring certain people to basically kill themselves, but to go into this grave forever, either the kid so he can see his dad, or Ben so he can see his wife again. And so it's kind of like, am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? Because, like I want to see my wife again, but I also know that I need to be here. Like she wouldn't want me to kill myself. So essentially they banish the Hatbox Ghost, and they kind of use that as like a diversion so that way he's not preventing them from banishing him. So they get to banish the Hatbox Ghost down into the depths of the earth, I'll say, so that he is no longer a threat to the rest of the ghosts that live at the mansion.
Right. Yeah, and that basically ends the movie They all kind of, well, Gabby ends up staying at the Haunted Mansion. Like she ends up living there. And it's not really explained how or why, but maybe they're having a party for Halloween, and that's why they're all together because it was Halloween when they ended the movie. And then all the people that helped her get rid of the Hatbox Ghost happened to be there. So I didn't understand if they like moved in with her at first or if
I
it's just a party.
think it was just a party.
That's what is gonna help me sleep at night is that it was a party because it doesn't make sense that they all just move in unless she needs help paying for the house or something. But she's a doctor, so I can imagine she makes plenty of money. So just kind of talking about some things that also went into the ratings that we talked about. The character that I was talking about, where I was like, dude, is this really what they're going for, or is he just not into it? Was Ben's character. Um, the character reminded me a lot of Luke from The Last Jedi, where it just seemed like he didn't care. And I get it that he's like this guy that lost his wife and you know kind of wants to be to himself until he can figure out this camera so that he can see and potentially talk to his wife at some point. But I listening to the voice he was using, you could tell that there's a lot of times that he was purposely using a different tone, and it was really bothering me because it was the tone that made me feel like he didn't care, and it was just like the old man kind of a um tone. But then when he's like doing dialogue with people, he talks like his normal self, and then once they're done talking, he's just like and I just didn't quite understand what they were really going for there, and I thought it was super distracting. Like, I hate my life. No, I'm not gonna help you with helping that girl. My life sucks. It was just basically like that, and it really bothered me. I don't really know if they felt that that was gonna bother people, but it pulled me out. I will be honest, because he doesn't do it the whole movie. He just does it every now and then, and it's just like, what are we doing here? I don't know if
Yeah.
you got that vibe from it, but I surely did.
I didn't pick up on it so much while I was watching the movie. I just knew that his character wasn't one that I was like super thrilled with. He seemed kind of boring at times. But one of the things that I would say they did wrong with this movie that they did better with in the first one is
Wait, can we? I want to say one more. If you're gonna shift away from this character, can I say one more thing?
go for it. I'm going to talk about casting in general.
So the one thing I do want to say, because I don't want to just leave it on that note of like this dude just did terrible. There were some scenes where he really put a lot of good acting effort into. There was a scene where, when he finally reveals what's going on with his wife to everybody, like he put a tearjerker into that. Like it makes you feel for him. When he was talking about, how they didn't leave, or like their time together didn't end on a good note. Like he was busy with work and he was really upset, and he just said, go do your thing, get out of here, I don't care, I'm busy. And then she goes to do something that makes her happy and get um tater tots, which she really loves to enjoy, and she was hoping to do that with her best friend. um she gets killed, and so he has to live with that the last interaction he had with her is that he was a grumpy dude and he was really mean to her. And so, he has to live with this grief, and you get to, you know, see that regret come out when he's just bawling in tears. So I felt like he did a really good job with that, and he did a really good job at the end when they're fighting the Hatbox Ghost. So that's why I'm when he it's it's not just the beginning when he does this thing where it kind of bothered me. He does it throughout. So it doesn't really make sense to me. Is he kind of this grumpy old man type thing and then he evolves into, really trying to be a part of this thing? Or why is he still showing this so much throughout? I feel like either you're invested in what you're doing and trying to help and possibly, you know, get rid of this ghost, or you're not. And why are you here? Kind of a thing. So that's what really bothered me. But I didn't want us to end that note saying that he was just straight up terrible. There was some great things. I didn't understand what the motive was there, because it had to have been acceptable because the director, said that one's good. We're gonna take it. And if it wasn't good, he would have said something like, "Yo, are you here for the money or are you here to make a good film?" Kind of a thing. So I don't want to believe it was that. I want to believe it was a director slash writer thing, but then it makes me question why they did it so much. Okay, you can move on to the casting thing.
I was just trying to see what other things this guy may have been in.
Ben in. Fun.
He was in Get Out. I do recognize him from that now that I see that.
Oh, yes. He was the dude that like snapped at the get together.
Yep. Yeah, so he was in that. He was in Uncut Gems. He was in Knives Out. He was in Straight Outta Compton and a handful of other things. Those are kind of the bigger ones. But it looks like he hasn't really had any big roles in a couple years, at least not from what I'm seeing. So maybe it's just, it's been a couple years. He's not
Yeah,
super, he
he's
like
in
took like a
Knives Out.
COVID break or something. I don't know. But yeah,
Either that
okay.
or we just
So
haven't seen these, because I mean I've definitely heard of some of these and they went to theaters, like Judas and the Black Messiah. That was in theaters. Maybe that was a good one. We just hadn't seen it. But
could be.
a lot of these look like TV series and music video type stuff.
I gotcha. So one big difference between this movie and the original is the original didn't really have very many big actors. It had Eddie Murphy, and then that was kind of it. And maybe his wife in the movie was a big actor too, and I just don't know her. Maybe I'm not familiar with her work, but like the casting for that was super small just in general because it was kind of just the mom, dad, and their two kids and the butler. Like that was kind of like the main cast. Whereas with this one, we have a huge cast and it's a lot of big names. You've got Owen Wilson. Ben was played by Lakeith Stanfield, so that's the one that I'm not saying he's not up to that caliber as some of these other ones. But Jared Leto was in here. I think I said Owen Wilson already. Jamie Lee Curtis was in here. Danny DeVito was in here. Dan Levi. I don't know how to say it.
Levi.
Rosario Dawson, Winona Ryder, Tiffany Haddish. Like that is a lot of big names. So I'm sure that wasn't cheap.
Right.
But so many of these characters, I feel like they were just side characters. Like, why did they even pay for a name like that? Like, Winona Ryder, for example, she was in the film for maybe 5 minutes max. Same with Dan Levy or Levi. And Jared Leto, he plays the Hatbox Ghost. Like, he doesn't even look like him. He doesn't sound like him because they have a voice changer on for him. What was the point of having a name like that in a role like that? Like, I feel like they focused so much on getting big names to draw people to the movie that they didn't put as much effort into the actual plot of the movie and to make more interesting moments in the movie itself. And they just relied on these character cameos happening. Did you get that vibe? Do you know what I mean?
There definitely was a lot of big names, and yeah, based on the thought of, from my perspective, like I said, I thought the original did a lot more for the ride than this one did, and they had kind of a generic plot that they threw in there, maybe because they realized, oh, there's really nothing too mind blowing with what's going on with the script that we're going to need some big names. I do think in a way that giving a big name for the Hatbox Ghost probably was a good move. I know we don't see him, but like he's iconic, and I feel like people may believe that the character has done justice more if it's a more well-known actor. Like if you put just some random person that's never done a movie before, maybe that would translate not so well. I don't know. I feel like kind of like you're saying, they're using names to draw people there, even though the plot and all that isn't insanely unique, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean to your point with the Hatbox Ghost, I wasn't super thrilled with him. He was okay, but like I feel like he wasn't even really scary or creepy until like the last 20 minutes of a 2-hour movie. Like the creepiness for some of the movie was the normal ghosts that were there, but if your main villain doesn't even come out until like the last half hour, it just I feel like they could have done so much more with him to make him more scary or more creepy or to keep that going longer than what they did. That that makes it kind of more of a disappointment for me and adds to the why did you waste a name actor on that role because it was such a small role. And I feel like it should have been a bigger one, a bigger role.
He was my favorite part of the movie, so that's kind of what I fixed
He
on.
was barely in it.
He was in it enough. I mean, I guess a couple other things I want to talk about. One thing, and this could just be my interpretation, but I think it was cool. So, it makes me sleep better at night. Ben's character, so like when after his wife passes away, he doesn't like give up on the whole touring passion in Louisiana. He is still showing people around uh the city as a tour guide and stuff. He dresses up like Dr. Facilier, in my opinion. And they're in Louisiana, so it makes sense. Like, were they actually going for that? Or was this just a coincidence? I'm hoping they were going for it and they were just trying to see if people would, you know, catch on. But I thought it was kind of a cool touch, if not, you know, what they were going for. It would have been kind of funny to see like a advertisement for like a Tiana restaurant or something. That would have been kind of funny. Because like I said, they're in Louisiana for the setting, so why not put a couple more Disney Easter eggs out? That's something we forgot to talk about
Oh yeah.
in the beginning. Okay, there is something that's kind of distracting in a way in this movie that kind of drove us nuts. There are so many name drops for stores and stuff. What was it? CVS, Amazon. Um, I'm gonna need help here on naming all of these. There was like five or six that we counted when we left the theater.
Oh goodness. There was they mentioned Amazon Prime, they mentioned CVS, they mentioned Burger King.
Yep, Burger King.
Um, oh goodness, what were the other ones? There was a handful more.
Oh, Dunkin' Donuts. Was it Dunkin' Donuts or Baskin Robbins?
Baskin Robbins.
So Baskin Robbins was another one. Because I was like, I swear, if they say something about Apple because they're considering selling to Apple, this is over. This is like the confirmation that they're gonna do it. Trying to
Seeing
think.
if I quickly Google it.
I don't know. Maybe we can come back to it after you're doing that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So they kept naming like random places where it's like, are they trying to get some sort of extra income from advertising all these places in the movie? At least that's what it felt like because it was somewhat distracting that they had to keep naming real world stores that they happened to shop at, and they didn't have to do that. Um, The other kind of cool thing that I thought, and I'm not 100% sure on this quite yet, but like whenever they showed the mansion that Gabby bought, like that's the picture that you see whenever you see like advertisements of the Haunted Mansion itself, not just the movie, but like the ride, the um the poster, like for the vinyl and stuff, those pictures. The one that's the thumbnail for this video, except I reversed it because of possible infringement stuff. That image is what they use a lot to show the house that they're at. The one behind me, which is
Alistar Crumps.
yeah, Crump's house, the Hatbox Ghost dude. This was his house, and I'm pretty sure this is another Haunted Mansion um, version of the ride, if not just a different angle of it. So I thought it was kind of cool that they used both of them for the movie, like for the two different locations. It's still a Haunted Mansion inspired for the building. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I did not find anything with my quick Google search for the brand names because it just keeps pulling up. Are there any drops in the ride, like sharp drops? It's too difficult to search for brand name drops in the movie. But there were a good handful of them. I'd say at least six, and I think we got four of them just now from memory. So that was pretty weird.
Yeah, because she was like, "Where?" They're talking about her notebook, and she was like, "Yeah, I bought my notebook from CVS." It's like, why was that a dialogue that was needed? Kind of a thing. It was like so random. And Gabby was saying how she has a Amazon issue, like a problem with buying so much stuff.
She forgot to cancel her subscription to Amazon Prime.
Oh yeah, for the Yankee candles. I was just like,
That's another one.
what? Why?
Yankee Candles.
It seems distracting. Again, they're like putting those big names in there, just like the actors and actresses. That it seems kind of an odd choice.
I guess
Could have
that's just
just
how they were able to pay for those name actors.
I guess so, because they could have just had like a candelabra that they found in the mansion right there that they used. Like anything that would have been a haunted mansion cosmetic that would have been lying around the house.
Yeah. Some of the ghost designs were pretty neat, I think. And you can see a handful of them in the trailer. But like one of the well, two of the portraits that became ghosts that kind of had a unique storyline that I thought was neat because a lot of these people or ghosts that are here are not just ones that the Hatbox Ghost had killed. Some of them were like a haunting took over them, and then that's how they died, is because they found a way to kill themselves because of that. Um, so, for example, there's two portraits in the hallway of these two brothers that both have guns pointed at each other. You know, one's on one side of the hallway, one's on the other side of the hallway. And I guess the way that they had died was they became delirious or something and decided to have a duel in the hallway, and then they shot each other, and then that's how they died and became ghosts in the mansion. So there are some unique little stories like that, or different characters that we see that have interesting costume designs and whatnot.
Yep. I want to believe all those portraits were ones that are in the ride. I can't confirm it because I haven't been on the ride in a while, but I want to believe that that's like all those ghosts are probably inspired by ones that are on the ride.
Yeah, they had the stretching room and the portraits from that talking to the characters, and same with the little candelabras or lights that were connected to the wall that are kind of like gargoyles holding up the candles. So I feel I don't know about the gargoyles holding the lights, but I feel like I remember seeing that from the ride. In that hall stretching oh, I said stretching hallway. I meant the stretching room, where like the ceiling keeps going higher and higher and higher, and the
They did have
walls
the
are stretching up
hallway.
and down.
Yeah, they
They
did
did,
have the
yes,
stretching room,
but
but they also had the endless hallway too, which is a part of the ride.
Yeah. So those were definitely some neat things to see. There was a scene or two where the characters were trying to be kicked out of the house by the ghosts. And so they like got shoved into a chair and then basically rode backwards down a flight of stairs, which is what they do in the ride, right? Because the chair had the kind of like that shell or clamshell style shape to it, much like the chairs in the ride. And so seeing them be dragged and pushed around in this chair that looked like it looked like one of the cartons that you would ride in the ride. So I feel like I'm saying ride a lot. But anyway, I liked seeing the connection. I was like, oh, it's like they're on the ride. All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it.
Yeah. It was neat. It was good. All right. I think that about wraps it up for the movie. Again, our ratings were a 5 from me out of 10 and a 6 from Sarah out of 10. It's pretty much an average film. Like we said, there's some good, there is some bad. We went through and kind of described it to you of our experience. And we also mentioned, although we don't have their ratings or their opinions, we can tell you that we had some friends that went with us that really enjoyed it. So there is a chance that you probably will too. So if you enjoyed this type of movie or this video, sorry, if you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when the next movie discussion drops. We have been doing a ton of these on the channel this year. And so, and it was all because of you guys, because you guys asked for these. So, look forward to more of these in the future. We're doing a whole bunch, and there's a lot of good movies ahead of us. Drops a like if you like the video, and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on the Haunted Mansion. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.